In the state of Maine, USA, there is a forest whose name appears on maps, but the locals are too afraid to even speak it aloud. Blackwood Forest, a dense and dark woodland where even sunlight hesitates to enter. The people of this town believe that whoever wanders into the deep trails of this forest never comes back. But for 28-year-old Ethan, this was nothing more than a myth. Ethan was a freelance journalist and podcaster who filmed mysterious and abandoned locations for his YouTube channel. His next project was a 100-year-old cabin deep inside Blackwood Forest, known as the Whispering Cabin. According to local legends, in 1920, a family lived there who vanished one night without a trace. And ever since, at night, faint cries and whispers have been heard coming from inside that cabin. While driving down a muddy forest trail, Ethan's car engine suddenly died. Outside was pitch-black darkness, and heavy rain had begun to pour. Ethan glanced at his watch. It was exactly 11 o'clock at night. He grabbed his phone. The screen flashed, "No service." There was no way back now. He picked up his camera, switched on his flashlight, and stepped out of the car. Cold raindrops struck his face. As far as his flashlight reached, only tall, dry, strangely shaped trees were visible, their shadows looming in the darkness like ghosts. After walking a short distance, Ethan noticed something through the cluster of trees. An old wooden structure standing silently in the dark. It was the cabin, the Whispering Cabin. The main door of the cabin was already half open, as if something was waiting for him. The moment Ethan stepped inside, the sound of rain outside suddenly grew faint, and a strange, dead silence filled the cabin. The air smelled of rot and old wood. "Hey guys, according to what I know, I am currently inside the infamous Whispering Cabin, deep in Blackwood Forest. The temperature in here has dropped drastically. I can literally see my own breath. The vibes in here are very, very wrong." The living room had an old couch, a broken chair, and a fireplace that had been cold for years. But suddenly, Ethan stopped in his tracks. Directly in front of the fireplace, on the floor, a circle had been drawn in ash. And in the center of that circle lay an old, burned doll. Half of the doll's face had been melted away, but its plastic blue eyes were completely clear, staring directly at Ethan. He moved his camera closer to the doll, but at that exact moment, the camera light began flickering on and off. "Come on, what's wrong with you?" As soon as the screen cleared again, what Ethan saw turned his blood to ice. On the camera screen, directly behind that burned doll, stood a tall, dark shadow. Its arms were unnaturally long, and it was leaning down, staring directly over Ethan's shoulder. Ethan spun around instantly, but there was no one there, only empty darkness. When he looked back at the camera screen, the shadow was gone from there too. Cold sweat ran down his forehead. He realized in that moment this was no ordinary abandoned place. Something was here, something very old and very, very angry. And then, from the upper floor of the cabin, came a thunderous bang, as if someone had slammed a door shut in rage. And immediately after that sound, from the staircase, came the slow, steady sound of something descending. Tap, tap, tap. Ethan's heart was pounding so hard that he could hear his own heartbeat inside his ears. The dim light of the flashlight fell on the old wooden staircase from where that sound was coming. With every step, the wood of the stairs creaked and groaned, as if something heavy was slowly, very slowly, descending. But when the flashlight finally reached the last step, there was no one there. The staircase was completely empty. Ethan took a deep breath and tried to convince himself, these are just sounds of old wood. It's happening because of the strong wind. But deep down, he knew he was lying to himself. He kept his camera rolling and slowly moved toward those very stairs. His goal was to reach the upper floor from where that thunderous bang had come. The moment he stepped onto the upper floor, the air up there was even colder and more suffocating than below. On both sides of the corridor were 3 doors. 2 doors were wide open, with nothing but darkness inside. But the 3rd door, the one at the very end of the corridor, was firmly shut. This was the same door that had slammed shut just moments ago. Ethan stepped forward and placed his hand on the handle of that closed door. The handle was so cold, it felt like a piece of ice. He turned the handle and pushed the door open. What he saw inside left his eyes wide open in disbelief. This was the master bedroom of the house. In the center of the room stood an old bed covered in a thick layer of dust. The wallpaper on the walls had peeled away, but the strangest thing of all were the marks on the walls. In the beam of his flashlight, Ethan saw that someone had carved deep, desperate lines into the entire wall with their fingernails, as if someone had been desperately trying to claw their way out. Ethan moved his camera closer to the wall to record those marks. But just then, he noticed something gleaming in an old mirror in the corner of the room. He shined his flashlight on the mirror. The mirror was foggy and covered in dust, but on its surface, written in blood or some dark ink, were words. The mirror read, "It feeds on your fear." Guys, can you see that? Can you see what's written on that mirror? This place is genuinely haunted. I feel like something is watching me every single second. I think I need to get out of here now. Ethan was just about to turn around when he heard another sound. It was the sound of a small child crying, very faint and very painful, as if a child was hiding behind the wall and weeping. "Daddy, it's in the dark. Don't look at it." Every single hair on Ethan's body stood on end. He froze right where he stood. The voice was coming from inside the wall. He pressed his ear against it. The crying was growing louder. But along with it, another terrifying sound joined in. The sound of something chewing, gnawing, as if some creature was crushing bones between its teeth. Without any warning, a deafening woman's scream echoed through the entire room. The sound was so sharp and so close that the camera slipped from Ethan's hands and crashed to the floor, and his flashlight flew across the room and went dark. The entire room was swallowed by pitch-black darkness. Ethan dropped to his knees and began frantically slamming his hands on the floor, searching for the flashlight. His breath was out of control, and sweat was dripping down his face. Where is it? Damn it! Where is the flashlight? Finally, his hand landed on the flashlight. He quickly pressed the button. The flashlight turned on, but it was flickering. The moment the first flash of light hit the mirror, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. In the mirror, right where he himself was standing, his own reflection was gone. Instead, inside the mirror stood a rotting, decomposed corpse with a mutilated face, and its hand was reaching out from inside the mirror, coming through the glass, straight toward Ethan's throat. With a deafening crash, the mirror shattered into pieces. Ethan let out a terrified scream, stumbled backward, and bolted out of the room. He sprinted through the corridor and lunged toward the staircase, but the moment he reached the top of the stairs, he stopped dead in his tracks. The staircase going down had vanished. In its place was only a deep, endless black void with no bottom, no end, and from within that darkness, hundreds of white, glowing eyes were staring upward, directly at Ethan. Ethan was frozen in place. His mind refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. Where the staircase once stood, there was now only a deep, foul-smelling void, as if the earth itself had opened its mouth. And from that darkness, hundreds of white, glowing eyes were staring up at him. They had no eyelids, only a merciless, hungry gaze. Then Ethan felt it. The darkness behind him in the corridor was growing deeper and colder. He could sense that shadow again, that tall, black shadow with unnaturally long arms. He had only two choices: either face that dark shadow behind him, or jump into that endless black void below. Fear made the decision for him. He aimed his flashlight into the gap and calculated the width of that void. It was not as wide as it looked. If he jumped with everything he had, maybe, just maybe, he could reach the other side, back to the part of the corridor he came from. Ethan took a deep breath, gripped his flashlight and camera tightly, and jumped. He made it to the other side, but the old, rotting wooden floor beneath his feet could not hold his weight. With a thunderous crack, the floor gave way and Ethan plunged straight down. He hit the ground hard. His head slammed into something solid. He tasted blood in his mouth. Complete darkness surrounded him from every direction. His flashlight had fallen somewhere far away, but it was still on, and where its beam of light was falling was no ordinary place. He had fallen into a hidden basement directly beneath the cabin. The air down here was so putrid that nausea began rising in his throat. The ground was littered with old books, charred pieces of wood, and bones. Ethan crawled across the floor and picked up his flashlight. In its beam, he spotted a table with an old leather-bound book resting on top of it. It looked like it was centuries old. With trembling hands, Ethan opened it. It was the diary of Thomas Blackwood, the head of the family that had vanished from this place in 1920. Ethan began turning the pages. What was written in the final few pages was enough to shatter anyone's sanity. According to the diary, Thomas's young son, Davy, had fallen gravely ill. His sickness had no cure, and every passing day brought him closer to death. Thomas, consumed by the terror of losing his son, had lost his mind. He had read in the old legends of this forest about an ancient entity that lived deep within these woods, something that could bring back the dead. Its name was never written down. It was only ever called the Thing in the Woods. The final page was soaked in blood. Written in wild, frantic strokes were these words: "I called it. It came. It healed Davy, but Davy is no longer my son. He has become something else, something hungry. He no longer eats like us. He needs living flesh." And then, the final line: "God forgive us. I opened the door, and I could not close it. It is here now. It is in this cabin, inside us, inside the walls. It is everywhere. We had no choice. We had to give it our souls." Ethan slowly closed the diary. Now everything made sense. The doll, the whispers, the mirror. They were all games played by this entity, using the cabin as a trap. The family had not simply vanished, they had been consumed, and their souls were still imprisoned within these walls. And now it was Ethan's turn. In the beam of his flashlight, in the corner of the basement, near a mound of dirt, something was moving. A creature that may have once been human, but whose arms and legs had grown unnaturally long. Its face had no eyes, only a mouth, a massive, gaping mouth, filled with razor-sharp, dagger-like teeth. This was Davy, or whatever had taken Davy's form. The creature was silently crawling toward Ethan, its claws scraping against the dirt floor with every slow, deliberate movement. It lunged. Ethan slammed his flashlight directly into its face, and the creature recoiled for just 1 second. He spotted the basement door opening upward toward the surface, and with every ounce of strength he had left, he ran. Ethan's life now depended entirely on the speed of his feet. Behind him, that horrifying creature that was once an innocent child was crawling toward him on its long, razor-sharp claws, dragging itself across the dirt floor. The rusty iron door of the basement was just a few feet away. Ethan gathered every last ounce of strength he had and lunged forward, grabbing the door handle. The door was jammed with rust. Ethan pushed upward with everything he had, and at that exact moment, he felt it. Ice-cold, razor-sharp claws wrapped around his ankle. The creature had grabbed his leg and was pulling him down. "No! Get off me! Get away!" Ethan swung his other foot and drove it straight into the creature's face with full force. The flashlight struck its eyeless skull, and its grip loosened. Ethan gave one final desperate push. The door flew open, and he crawled out of the basement and slammed the door shut behind him, jamming a heavy wooden plank across it. He was back on the ground floor of the cabin, and incredibly, that deep black void was gone. Those glowing eyes had vanished. The front door of the cabin was wide open, and through it, the dark, rainy night outside was clearly visible. Ethan did not waste a single second. He ran. He sprinted through the darkness of the forest, crashing through bushes and slamming into trees, racing toward his car. His clothes were torn, blood was pouring from his body, but his mind was screaming only one thing: run. Get as far away as possible. After just a few minutes of running, he spotted his car between the trees. He reached it, pulled out his keys with trembling hands, yanked the door open, threw himself inside, and locked it instantly. He started the car. This time, the engine did not betray him. Ethan threw it into reverse, slammed the accelerator, and left that cursed forest far behind as he sped toward the highway. It was 6 in the morning. The first rays of sunlight were falling across the highway. Ethan was now standing at a small gas station, miles away from that forest. He was safe. He wiped the mud and blood from his face and took one long, deep breath of relief. He looked at his camera sitting on the front seat. A tired smile crossed his face. He had footage of the most terrifying and most real horror documentary the world had ever seen. Something that would shake the entire internet the moment it was uploaded. He pulled out the memory card, slid it into his laptop, and began checking the files. He wanted to see exactly what had been recorded inside that cabin. The video played on the laptop screen. It showed Ethan pushing open the front door of the cabin and stepping inside. The corridor, the burned doll, the shattered mirror, everything was exactly as he remembered it. But then the video reached the moment where he had fallen into the basement, and Ethan's hands began to shake. The laptop nearly slipped from his lap. In the video, in the corner of the basement, where that mound of dirt was, there was no creature. There was no Davy. Instead, sitting there in that corner, was Ethan himself. His own body, his own clothes, his own face, but with arms and legs that were unnaturally long, and where his eyes should have been, there were none. Only a massive, terrifying mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth. The video made it clear that creature was not Davy. It was Ethan himself. A version of Ethan, already trapped inside some loop of time, pulling the real Ethan back into that basement. So the cycle could never, ever end. All the doors of Ethan's car suddenly locked on their own. The sunlight at the gas station began to disappear, and the daylight slowly began turning back into that same black, storming night. He panicked and looked through the car window. There was no gas station outside. Only tall, dry, sinister trees standing in the darkness. He was still in that forest, still in front of that same cabin. He had never left. "You are home, Ethan." And then, in the rearview mirror, he saw his own face staring back at him, but wearing that horrifying, eyeless smile. Some doors, once opened, trap you inside forever. The whispering cabin of Blackwood Forest still stands there today, waiting for the next traveller.